Merry Christmas, y'all, and welcome to another episode of The Crazy Short Hairy Dude. On this episode, we are talking about Santa Claus, obviously, if you couldn't tell already by my get up. So, we're going to dive into the history of the character, the historical figure that inspired the modern day myth, and some popular depictions of Santa in film and television and comics and books, various things like that. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. So, where did it all start? Well, it all really started in the Roman Empire, actually. So, yes, today I was thinking about the Roman Empire, uh, like most men do at least once during the day. Um, but in this case, I was thinking of Saint Nicholas, the original Saint Nicholas out of Myra, which is right here. It's a little bitty place in modern day Turkey. Now, traditionally, Saint Nicholas, um, he lived from about March 15th in the year 270 till December 6th of 343, and that's AD. He was also known as Nicholas of Bari, and he was an early Christian bishop of Greek descent, which makes sense for the region. Um, and he was from that area of Turkey. And there were many different miracles associated with his works, and so he's also known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker. But he became the patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, children, brewers, pawnbrokers, toy makers, and let's see, unmarried people, and students. That's quite an odd collected there, but he's the patron saint of all those types of people, and his reputation kind of evolved from uh, among like the pious and was common in for the early Christian saints, but his legendary habit of secretly gift giving is what gave rise to the folklore of Santa Claus. So little is known about the historical Saint Nicholas. The earliest accounts of his life were really written centuries after his death, and probably contain some legendary elaborations, but we don't know for sure. He is said to have been born in the seaport of Lycia in modern day Turkey to wealthy Christian parents. In one of the earliest attested and most famous incidents of his life, he's said to have rescued three girls from being forced into things they didn't want to do by dropping a sack of gold coins through the window of their house each night for 3 nights so their father could pay a dowry for each of them. Other early stories tell of him calming a storm at sea, saving three innocent soldiers from wrongful execution, and chopping down a tree possessed by a demon. There's a lot of stories about this guy. In his youth, he is said to have made a pilgrimage to Egypt and to the area of Syria, Palestina, which is now this area over here. Shortly after his return, he became the bishop of Myra. He was later cast into prison during the persecution, uh, during a lot of different persecutions that were going on during the Roman Empire. But he was released after uh, Constantine rose to power and declared Christianity to be legal. Uh, let's see. An early list makes him an attendee of the First Council of Nicaea in 325, but he's never mentioned any writing of by people who were at the council. So he might have had a hand in shaping what became known as the Bible, but we don't know for sure. Uh, Fewer than 200 years after his death, um, the St. Nicholas Church was built in Myra over the site of the church where he had served as bishop, and his remains were moved to a sarcophagus in that church. Uh, there have been reports over the years that his remains wound up being stolen and taken to Italy somewhere, and I think there's even one guy in the Midwest somewhere that claims to have a piece of St. Nicholas. Uh, there's a whole episode of uh, Expedition Unknown talking about that, so go check it out. It's really good, really interesting. So he was the original uh, Santa Claus, the original, the start of this whole thing. Uh, Now, uh, in Dutch, Sinterklaas was a legendary figure based off of Saint Nicholas. Uh, let's see if we get into another one here. So, Sinterklaas is based on the historical figure of Saint Nicholas. Um, he is depicted as an elderly, stately, and serious man with white hair and a long, full beard. He wears a long red cape um, over a traditional white bishop's robe, uh, dons a red mitre and ruby ring, and holds a gold-colored long ceremonial shepherd's staff with a fancy curled top. He traditionally arrived, according to this depiction of him, Santa Claus traditionally arrives in a steamboat from Spain and rides a white horse. In the Netherlands, the televised Sinterklaas specials have named the horse, and until 2019, Sinterklaas rode uh, Amerigo, who was pensioned or died and replaced with the horse called Ossenel, which means also fast, after a passage in a well-known Sinterklaas song. In Belgium, the horse is named, I'm not going to try to say it, which means bad weather today. Also, another name which means nice weather today. So Sinterklaas is a more uh, Netherlands kind of tradition of the character. Um, but Santa Claus himself is originating. The idea of Santa Claus originated in uh, Western Christian culture with Saint Nicholas and Sinterklaas, and it's we all know it's this character who brings presents on Christmas Eve to children all over the world. Now, the popular conception of Santa Claus originates in folklore traditions from the 4th century bishop Saint Nicholas, like I said. Uh, Also with Father Christmas, an English figure uh, who now they're both regarded as the same person. And Santa is usually depicted as a portly, jolly, white bearded man, often with glasses, wearing a red coat with white fur collar and cuffs, red trousers, a red hat trimmed with white fur, black leather belt, and boots, carrying a bag full of gifts for children. Um, and he is popularly associated with a deep, hearty laugh, frequently rendered in Christmas literature and songs and whatnot as "ho ho ho." Now, the image of Santa Claus in the red suit and everything originated actually in the United States during the 19th century after Dutch settlers brought the legend of Sinterklaas, St. Nicholas, uh, to New Amsterdam in the 17th century, present-day New York. And in 1823, an American poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, was written by an anonymous author and he recounts St. Nicholas arriving at the author's home on Christmas Eve in a sleigh pulled by flying reindeer. The poem laid the foundation for modern depictions of Santa Claus, strengthening the association between Santa Claus and Christmas. Over time, this connection has been maintained and reinforced with songs and radio and television, movies, children's books, all these different things. But that's where he kind of started. Now, Father Christmas himself, just kind of a little backstory here. Father Christmas dates back to the 16th century in England during the reign of Henry VIII, when he was pictured as a large man in green or scarlet robes lined with fur. And he typified the spirit of good cheer at Christmas, bringing peace and joy, good food and wine, and good revelry. As England no longer kept the feast day of St. Nicholas on the 6th of December, the Father Christmas celebration was moved to the 25th of December to coincide with Christmas Day. The Victorian revival of Christmas included Father Christmas as the emblem of good cheer. His physical appearance was variable, with one image being from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which, if you haven't watched my videos on A Christmas Carol yet, be sure to go check those out. I do a dramatic reading of each of the 5 parts of that story, including the part about the ghost of Christmas present, which was heavily inspired by the image of Father Christmas. Let's see what else here. So during the 19th century, a book called A New Year's Present to the Little Ones from 5 to 12 was published in New York, and it contained old Santa Claus with much delight, an anonymous poem describing Santa Claus on a reindeer-pulled sleigh. And then we have a few years later, a poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, better known today as The Night Before Christmas, in New York, and that was published on 23rd December of 1823. And this is where we can get the popular depictions of Santa Claus, is that poem. Now, by 1845, Kris Kringle from Christkindl, German for Christ Child, was a common variant of Santa in parts of the United States. So that's where the name Kris Kringle came from. Let's see what else. As years passed, Santa Claus evolved into a large, heavyset person. One of the first artists to define the modern image of Santa Claus was Thomas Nast, a German-born American cartoonist during the 19th century, who immortalized Santa Claus with an illustration on January 3rd of 1863 for Harper's Weekly, in which Santa was dressed in an American flag and had a puppet with the name Jeff written on it, reflecting its. It was a little contrast to the American Civil War that was going on. Let's see. Nast was inspired by Belschnickel, part of the folklore of southwestern Germany, where he was born. In this drawing, Santa is also pulled by reindeer. You might remember the name Belschnickel from The Office. Dwight dresses up as that character for a traditional German Christmas. Now, the story that Santa Claus lives at the North Pole might have also been a creation by this artist. His Christmas image in Harper's issue of the 29th of December of 1866 was a collage of engravings titled Santa Claus and His Works, which included the caption Santa Clausville in P. A color collection of his pictures published in 1869 had a poem also titled Santa Claus and His Works by George P. Webster, who wrote that Santa Claus's home was near the North Pole in the ice and snow. And so that's where that came from. Uh, Now, in the 20th century, L. Frank Baum's The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus was a children's book, and that was published in 1902. And much of the Santa Claus mythos was not firmly established at that time. And, and so, there were little depictions and different variations for that one. But images of Santa Claus through became really well known, and like the red and everything really kind of was cemented with Coca-Cola. Yes, so the images of Santa Claus were conveyed through the depiction, the artist renderings for the Coca-Cola company's Christmas advertising during the 1930s. The image spawned urban legends that Santa Claus was invented by Coca-Cola, and yada yada yada, or that Santa wears the red and white because they were the colors used by Coca-Cola. Well, while Coca-Cola didn't invent Santa Claus and didn't invent the red and the white, they definitely helped cement it in the popular culture. And their sales soared with the idea of Santa Claus drinking Coca-Cola, and it became a Christmas beverage. In popular culture, in films and television, there have been tons and tons of movies depicting Santa Claus. One of the most famous ones from early in Hollywood's day was Miracle on 34th Street. I'm talking about the original Miracle on 34th Street, not the remake. The remake is fantastic, but if you've never seen the original, I do recommend it. You can find it on Disney Plus right now, along with the remake. But the original one stars, stars Maureen O'Hara and John Payne, and veteran character actor Edmund Gwenn as Kris Kringle, as Santa Claus, and that film, and he does such a great performance as the character. In fact, he won an Oscar for that role. So I do recommend seeing that one. And of course, Richard Attenborough in his version of Miracle on 34th Street was very well done as well, and he does a fantastic job with that. Now, one of my favorite versions of Santa Claus, I gotta go with Tim Allen as Scott Calvin in the Santa Claus movies, especially the first one. That is one of the first films I remember seeing around Christmas time. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies, and so in my mind, when I think Santa Claus, I think Tim Allen as that character. But there have been a lot of really good Santas over the years. You had ooh, what was his name? I can't think of his name right now. But you had why can I not think of his name? Ed Asner. Thank you. I remember it. Ed Asner in the movie Elf with Will Ferrell. He does a great job as Santa in that as well. And Mickey Rooney did a voice for Santa years ago, and Alec Baldwin did the voice of Santa for the movie Rise of the Guardians, and I think he put on a Russian accent for that one, if I'm remembering correctly. Let's see who else. Kurt Russell in the Netflix movies Christmas Chronicles or whatever it's called. Uh, he does a pretty good Santa for that as well. Now, in comics, Santa has even made his way to comics. Now, in the Marvel comics, Santa is canon within the Marvel universe, and he's identified by Cerebro, Professor X's uh, machine for finding and identifying mutants. And Santa is an Omega level mutant, and possibly the most powerful one ever registered. His powers are vast, ranging from functional immortality to super strength to reality warping magic. He has a complex history tied to St. Nicholas, Old Winter, and the Norse god Odin in the comics, and has interacted with characters such as Captain America, Nick Fury, Howard the Duck, She-Hulk, and the X-Men, and he once even wielded the Infinity Gauntlet. Now, in DC, Santa is a well-established figure, sometimes portrayed as an anthropomorphic personification of the Christmas spirit. Um, Modern interpretation from the 2023 miniseries Batman Santa Claus Silent Night depicts him as an ancient, muscular warrior and powerful magician who has a history of fighting mythological demons and even trained Batman in combat. A recurring gag in the DC canon is that he delivers a lump of coal to the supervillain Darkseid every Christmas. So, yeah, and he's appeared in various other independent comics and things like that, but the two most famous are probably the DC and Marvel. Uh, yeah, so that's a little history on Santa Claus, and I think honestly, the character of Santa, he represents some of the best things about Christmas. It's a time for giving, to open up our hearts to our fellow man, and to really give without expecting anything in return, and share the love. Honestly, Christmas is a time where we remember the birth of Jesus Christ. Hence the name. That's where the name comes from. People, sorry to burst your bubble, but it's in the name. Uh, and Jesus coming to Earth was the greatest gift that anybody could ever receive, because he came uh, to show us how to reconnect to God, and he gave us that way by taking all of our sins upon himself, dying on the cross, and then rising from the grave, showing us that we can also defeat spiritual death, um, and overcome that eternal separation from God. Uh, so yeah, so Santa Claus does represent that idea of giving, and giving generously, and you know just everything that's good about Christmas. He's a representation. Of course, over the years, we've very much commercialized Christmas, um, but uh, but we shouldn't ever forget uh, what the concept is for, and what the day's for. It's about being with your family, and celebrating the fact that we have a God who loves us. And so, anyway, I hope everybody is well. Hope everybody's happy, and yeah, we'll keep making these videos. Um, I'll have another video for tomorrow, being Christmas Eve. I'll have another video talking about the birth of Jesus, and some of the history behind that, some what was going on in the world during that time, which I think the Gospels really set that up well. Um, yeah, and we'll just talk about the significance of that, and some of the dark things that happened during that time, because people were starting to freak out that the Messiah had come. So, anyway, that being said, um, hope everybody's doing well again, And until next time, Merry Christmas. God bless.